Hello and welcome everyone to our Fantasy Grounds map and image creation. I'm Josh, and this is our Saturday stream where we go over all of the art-related news as well as do some demonstrations of the map creation features inside of Fantasy Grounds Unity. So thanks everyone for joining me today, and we'll go through this. I'm actually one of the first things that I want to talk about today is the I've been going through and working on all of the new or all of the old themes that were released with the art package and that are purchasable on the store. So we're going to be doing a big update on all of those here pretty soon. This is the Wizard's Desk theme, completely reworked. So there's a lot of stuff here in progress, and I thought I would show off some of the new images today that are used in the UI here, which I'm pretty excited about. I think along with all of the new dice updates and a lot of the other features that are kind of coming, the visual representation of Fantasy Grounds is becoming more and more important to me. So I'm really going to pouring myself a lot into this. Also coming out this month, we have some new art packages as always. So lots of really exciting stuff around the corner here. But yep, I'm going to be going back through and reworking all of the old themes and starting with the ones in the art package as well as the officially released ones that I created. So exciting stuff. Been working hard on a lot of these images and whatnot, like these. Trying to create a really a complete feel for what the theme should kind of represent inside of Fantasy Grounds. So very exciting. But without too much further ado, we'll get right into some map creation here. Now, last week we had talked about I'd have no idea what PTBR is actually, so I work in just the art kind of side of stuff, so it might be something that's outside of my realm of expertise here. So anyway, last week we had talked about creating some new images this week. So I have a text document that I write down anything that I uncover or anything along those lines, but I closed it last week and forgot to save it. So if anyone can remind me on what we're supposed to be making this week, that would be great. Otherwise, we can just kind of jump in and begin to create something all brand new. Let's open up our assets here. Well, that's our modules. Let's go to our assets. And I'm just going to set this up right over here, kind of maximize our space here a little bit. And I'll just create a new image record here. And then we can close this down. I'm going to set my grid to 100 by 100. Yeah, it looks like we'll do whatever we want today. Isn't that a great day? I love that. So what is everyone feeling like we should do this day? I'm going to lower down the opacity of this grid a little bit. Anyone have any suggestions, or should we just start building something? Most of all of the newest art packs. All you have to do is once you. It depends on how you're actually starting off here. A lot of the assets will have a built-in grid system, but you can still alter it after the fact. Once you're in your image workspace here, all you have to do is go over to the grid panel, and you have a whole bunch of different controls. You can change the type of grid from hexagonal, traditional, square, and you can also turn off this aspect lock ratio, and you can make this anything you wish. You can also set it with your mouse, so if you need to match up a grid size to something that you have imported in, you can do that as well. So you have total control, as well as moving the grid around. We can actually move it here. This is also where we set up all of our distance elements. So when we're in actual play, if you use both mouse buttons at once, you'll get this. So if we could come over into here, for example, what this is doing is it's doing a distance of 1 per square. So this is going to be 15 squares across. So we can actually put in anything that we wish here. If we were doing a large map, for example, we might want to put in mile. And this is going to, when we come back into our element over here, you can see that this will be 15 miles. So all of these are completely customizable for each individual map, each individual image record, and we can change the multiplier as well. So if we were doing like a 5e, we could do 5 feet per element, and then when I draw this out, you'll see that that is 70 feet, 25 feet. So yeah. And we'll go back in and just put these back. Yes, so the last 3 art packs that have been released are completed map packs. So they are images that are already pre-done. And we've looked at them here before. It's like a conglomerate. They all kind of fit together. So in the completed map pack 3 that just came out, we have some totally pre-made, pre-rendered maps. So you can just kind of drag and drop. That's a good question. I don't even remember. It's been quite some time. I have some new ones though that will be coming out here shortly. I've been working on some modern warfare type stuff, like World War II military art packs, as well as more sci-fi stuff. And as always, I'm always working on more fantasy kind of things as well. So lots of interesting stuff kind of coming down the pipeline. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. But let's we can just kind of go in, and it's always good to create some environments using all of the different tools. We have so many new painting tools that have come out in the last year, and they are phenomenal. And we can create pretty much anything that we want to inside of Fantasy Grounds now. And in that, using the painting system, it leverages itself towards all of the line of sight and lighting exceptionally well, because it's all intertwined. Fantasy city streets, we can certainly do that. I'm always down for urban environments. Those are super fun to make. And I feel as though that those are ones that oftentimes kind of are better at some sort of like storytelling, because there's so much. I think that's probably because we live in such a urban, modern environment as well, most of us, and that it lends really well to that. We kind of did something similar to that with the sci-fi streets. We did this a little while ago, and we even did some of these like an automat and some of the interiors as well. I still have to finish this up with all of our lighting and whatnot. So yeah, let's do a a fantasy style street. We'll do something similar to that, and we'll kind of dive in here. And this might actually be a good one too, a segue into. I'm going to be doing some. I've gotten a lot of requests on how to create your own brushes and add in some additional kind of image elements that you can use inside of the system. So we won't get to that today, but I will prep that for next week. So maybe we'll come across a couple of images that we'll want to add into addition to that, and then next week we'll dive into that creation and some good practices for working with the brush system. Not only just stroke, but also fills as well. I can demonstrate the creation of them and how I suggest you guys kind of go about doing that. So let's get going here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my stroke. I'm going to create a new painting layer. And I'm going to go into my rectangle, and I'm going to switch over to my fill element over here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put down some ground. Now, we can do this a couple of different ways, and I always want to stress that. There's always a multitude of ways that you can approach every map creation or image creation inside of Fantasy Grounds. I want to stress, too, that it's not just map creation. You can create handouts in here. You can do all sorts of different really cool stuff, and it can be super fun to kind of do that. But let's dive into some of these other elements over here. So we're going to be doing. I'll do like a stone brick element to the base of this, and we'll also do some grass and some dirt where it's appropriate. But because we're going to be doing this in a majorly urban environment, we will start off with like a stone tile. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to type in stone tile here. And we're going to get some of these different elements here. I think that actually, let me go to stone fill. I think that I think I'm going to use something like this. This adds a little bit of additional kind of texture to it. So I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to drop it right in here. And this is going to be in the Eastern Buildings map pack. And now let's, all I have to do with this tool selected is I'm actually going to hold down Control, and that's going to help me snap to my grid. And this is one of the reasons why I always set up the grid first, is because this is kind of like our building block by which that we kind of set everything up. And depending on the system that you're going to be playing in, this may be more or less important. The other thing is that we can always change this in the middle, and I oftentimes will do that. Whoops, I want to make sure I switched, and I forgot that I had switched. So I'm just going to grab this and delete that. I needed to come back to my rectangle, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag out a section, something like this. Now you can see that this is just like a seamless texture, kind of fills in here. And we have a little bit of, some elements in between the stone, and this is kind of what I want to go with here. Now some of the stonework's a little bit big for what I want to kind of create here, so I'm just going to go over into my edit fill area here, and you can see here we have some additional controls, because this is a fill element. You can see I can scroll this around just by left clicking and dragging. Now I can rotate it, and I can use my control and mouse wheel to scale the images in addition to that. So I'm going to scale this down a little bit. And it's very repeating right now, and that's okay. We're going to be covering up some of this stuff with some additional kind of elements here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to block out where my buildings are going to be. And this is going to be my underlying street here. And we can do this in a couple of really cool different ways. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a new painting layer. And I'm going to do a couple of other fills on top of here. And then I can remove the areas that I don't want and let this kind of shine through. Now, if this needs to get altered any time in the process, I can easily do that. And I'm just going to double click over here and rename some of these things. So if we start creating too many different layers, then we can keep this kind of organized. And I'm just going to call this stone tile. And make sure I have this one selected when I go into my other elements over here. And the next thing I'm going to do, I think let's just do something like dirt. And this will be, like I said, this will be the areas in which that we're going to have our buildings. And we can add some like grass elements and plant elements and things along those lines as we kind of progress here. But I think I'll go into the 2019 art package, and in the tiles here we have a whole bunch of different elements that we can kind of use. I'm going to be using this one for a little bit higher contrast here, and we can change these colors as we progress as well. And again, what I can do is I can just I can either, if I want to adhere very strictly to my grid system, I can turn on my grid snap, and this will do it automatically for me. But I like the option of being able to just turn it on and off. I use a lot of like keyboard shortcuts, so that's how I kind of prefer to work. And so holding control will do the same thing as turning this on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down control, and I'm going to drag out a couple of elements here. And maybe we'll do something like this, and then we'll do maybe over here. And let's do another one. Well, we'll do this like an open area over here. These are some pretty good squares here, and I'm actually going to divide this up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my eraser, and I'm going to make it a little bit larger. And with my eraser selected, I'm just going to erase out a little bit of an element through here, like a little path or something that's going to be through this area. So we'll do a building here, another building here, and then some stuff over on this side. Now this is very like kind of rigid looking, right? We really don't want that. So let's go over into our fill at this moment. And like this one, for example, I can hold down, as we can see here, the F key, and I can fade out those edges. Now this allows me to kind of create a little bit extra. We're going to add on to this, but this is just going to give us a little bit to kind of go on here. And we can do it all with all of these as well. And I'm going to come back over into here, and this is a little bit too complex. I don't need it to be this complex. So all I have to do is come over into here, and I'm going to simplify these selected strokes because that's all I really need. And let's do it for this one as well. Now we have this nice little kind of random pathway through this section. And we can grab these at any time, and we can kind of change where they are or adjust them. We can also add to these fill elements to make things different shapes and so on and so forth. So all of this is available to us. But this is going to be our starting for what we're actually going to be able to create here. And you can see we've already got some elements that are kind of set up here exactly the way that we want to. And we can kind of jump back and forth. So I'm going to actually call this layer dirt. And then we can add in those particular elements that we want to. And I can jump underneath and above and all of this. So if we wanted to create like some sort of sidewalk or whatnot, we certainly could. We could do that on any layer that we wish. But if we ever wanted to have something that kind of comes out from underneath, we're able to do that as well. We might want to do like drains or like sewer entrances, or who knows, right? The sky is kind of our limit. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my stamp tool. And in the same area in here, I think it's in decorations, I have a stamp that is, this kind of circular ground as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger, and I'm going to drop down the opacity of this quite a bit. And this is what I'm going to use to kind of rough up some of these edges a little bit. I'm doing this right on exactly the same layer here, right? And this again is just to add a little bit of more flair. And if any time that I stamp somewhere that I don't want it, I can just switch over to my edit, and I can grab it and I can move that stamp somewhere else, right? So we have complete flexibility in our creation process. And I'm just kind of getting rid of some of this, these areas that are a little bit too rigid here, right? We're working in a technology that is a lot more or less precise, we should say, right? So we have a lot more kind of now again, you could do this just by adding to the fill elements and creating additional shape elements and doing all kinds of things along those lines. But that is not, this is another way to approach it, right? So inside of Fantasy Grounds, it's so flexible that there are always going to be several different ways to approach any creation process. I kind of like doing it this way, but you feel free to do it any way you wish, right? Like I did before with the eraser tool, and we just erased that section out of there. In that same vein, you can kind of come in here and do exactly the same stuff. So if we wanted to add to these fill layers, we certainly could. We can even subtract from them and do all sorts of that kind of interaction that we would want to do there. Just going to get rid of this corner a little bit. Let's make that a little bit more rounded. And I like this breakup of texture here, the way that this, we have some of that still rigidness, but it just seems a little bit more lived in, right? I always think of it as like a lived in space. As you occupy a space and as it gets used, you get worn, elements get shifted and all of that. So it's super fun to kind of try to recreate that feeling. One of the other things that you want to take into account while you're creating this stuff is the contrast. You want things to be easily identifiable, but you don't want to be too much so, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come into this on my layer level, on this level over here, and I can change all of those different color parameters. This is going to add to everything that is painted onto this level, right? So this means that I can come back in later and I can alter, I can just grab this again without having to change its color value. And I can, anything that I add to this layer will be instantly adjusted towards this. So here we have some sliders. And we have this color picker window here. We also have an eyedropper tool and the hexadecimal code. So any way that we interact, if I want to lower down the opacity of this entire layer, you see that I can do so. But I can also drag around up in here and it will adjust. And so I think what I'm going to do is I want to make it a little bit more, I want it to have a little bit more, maybe something like this, but maybe a little bit darker. So I'm going to take these base values and I'm just going to reduce them a little bit. I want all of them to kind of slide down. So why don't we take 20 away from all of these? So we'll do like 169. And then in this one, we'll do 211. And then in this one, we will do 235. And there, that's pretty good. So with this the setup, and like I said, any dirt that I add, so if I go back into my painting and all of these elements, I can leave them exactly the same way that they are. And when I stamp onto this layer, because this color change happens on the layer system and not on the per image element, then all of these will get adjusted to that as well, as you can see here. So I don't have to worry about that color change anymore. Great, so now we have our basis for what we're going to be building everything else up on. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to build out some of our structures, right? Now we can do this a bunch of different ways and depending on what you're trying to achieve here. Now we have, there's the Fantasy Buildings art packages that came out a little while ago, and those are pre-created buildings that you can just kind of grab and drag and just drop right on here or paint on here with a stamp tool. Or you can build them yourself. There's all the tools in here for doing all of this stuff. Oh, hey, Spencer. Well, the only way, there is a way, and that's a good question. So the question is that you can darken something, and because of the way that the color system is inside of Fantasy Grounds, it's additive, which means that it adds on to the existing color, right? So, for example, if you have something that is black, you can't make it blacker. But there is a way to lighten things. And it requires an effects layer, however. And so if you use an effects layer, for example, let's say I wanted to lighten this element here, I can create an effects layer. Let's drag that down in underneath. And in my effects tab, I can go to adjust colors, my favorite of all time effects layer here. And in here we have a brightness, and you can see I can brighten up that all the way. And if I bring this all the way up, you can see that this gets all the way to white. A rather blinding white at that. And again, we can also go all the way down to black. So yes, you can lighten things, but it just requires a little bit of an additional kind of element here. I'm going to delete that because we don't really need that right now, but we will be using some effects layers later. Yeah, you're very welcome. You can do a lot of really cool and fun things with the effects layers. And I can show you how to actually use effects layers to create lighting effects that would be very difficult to do with the lighting system, as well as using it in tandem with the lighting system to create some very convincing scenarios. So it's a really interesting what we can do now with all of these different systems. So let's dive right in here. So one of the things I'll demonstrate a couple of stuff that we can do here. So let's go into the medieval buildings. And in here we have all of our decorations, right? And we have, like I said, we have a whole bunch of different pre-created kind of building like structure stuff here. And we also have brushes for things like platforms and roads. And you see here, this is another way that you can kind of create. We could have done a base of dirt and just done all of our roadways with like a cobblestone kind of thing, as well as like these stylized stone walls. So lots of really interesting stuff here. And here again, we have fills, and we have a bunch of different ground fills, as well as platform fills, as well as different types of rocks, roofing elements. And we can create anything that we really need in this system, right? So there's anytime that you run into a problem where you wish that you had some sort of thing, you can just make it with the painting tools. You can really literally make anything that you want to. In addition to this, inside of this, there is a whole bunch of backgrounds. And I believe that I also made a whole bunch of different pre-created maps as well. These are my test when I'm actually building the art packages, so I don't have everything always up to date inside of these. And so let's dive right into some of these buildings here. And these are kind of set up in a way where you can stack them to create lots of additional kind of elements to it, right? So if we wanted to grab like a base kind of building here, and I'm just going to do this with stamps, or we could just drag and drop them as well, I suppose. But let's do it with a stamp here. And so you can see we have this element of a building, maybe something like this. And then we could just drag and drop this right here. I think what we'll do is let's put this like here. Oh, I didn't want to stamp that down there. So I'm just going to grab that out of there and do here. We'll create a new painting tab. It's always good to manage your layers over here. So let's just stamp something in like this. And because we're doing this in a layered system here, what this allows us to do, like I said before, is we can now add things in between those layers. We can create new layers and drag and drop them. And we can also group them together in folders. So we have total flexibility here. So now we have something like this, and then we can grab some additional kind of elements like this. Let's flip it this way, and maybe I'll connect this over here, something like that. and kind of build up these creations here, right? And make this into some sort of like layered building. And so this is one way where you can quickly kind of create these kind of environments, right? And we're going to be adding some elements in and around and underneath and so on. Maybe we'll grab, yeah, I think that that's pretty good. We'll actually add some elements over here. So now I'm going to grab something like this. And let's put this on this side. Now, let's say you want your scaling to be something different. There's lots of different ways that you can kind of approach that as well. And the easiest would be is to come into here. And this is one of the great things. Let's say, for example, if we look at our grid here, let me just up it a little bit so that we can kind of see it a little bit. And let's say that this distance, we want these buildings to be much larger. All we have to do is change the scale of our grid system. And then we can come back in and readjust the scale of our fill areas as well, right? So let's say we wanted to make these twice as large. We can just do something like this. And then come into our painting tab, go over into our stone tile here, right? And we can hold Control and bring this down to fit our scaling. Super easy. And then we've done that in no time at all. Now this grid is a little bit too intrusive for me, so I'm just going to click on the tint tab here and lower down that opacity. I like the ability to use the grid, but I don't want it to be overly complex. Now with all of this kind of stuff set up, we have a whole bunch of different areas over here, and we'll actually go into some of the other processes as well. We can actually build the interiors to these if we wanted to and do all of that stuff. But what we want to do is we want to create these kind of elements in here. And what we can do is let's make this one. We'll keep this one pretty separate. We'll add in a couple of other buildings over here as we kind of go along here. But I want to make this one feel more like a city kind of block. So we're going to line this with buildings all along here. And what we can do is just kind of grab, and we can do some of these awnings and whatnot and kind of pop them out. And probably do that on a lower level here, so they kind of pop out from underneath and make them kind of like storefronts. So let's grab some of these elements. Let's go back into our painting tab, make sure that we are in our stamp tool here. Let's do some larger elements here first. Oh yeah, because let's put this back so our scale is appropriate when we. Fantasy Grounds is smart enough that when you drag these elements out, it switches it to the scale that it's supposed to be at as you kind of progress here. So what we want to do is we want to maintain our grid system until we get to the very end. Oh, maybe we'll do like this. Yeah, we'll do something like this, I think. Like a little guardhouse above. And I'm not going to worry too much about, one of the things that we could be concerned about is like all the different shading elements. But I'm not going to be too concerned about that right now. We can do a lot of adjustments after the fact. Yeah, maybe we'll do this here. And what this is going to give us is that feeling that there are some buildings that are taller and some that are shorter. And we might be able to fill in some of these gaps in through here as well. But I like these little alcoves and whatnot. Always interesting, like these little elements that we can kind of go down and kind of see. And especially when we're dealing with like a fantasy kind of environment, right? Like these are all supposed to be. And at any time, we should probably create another painting layer so we can kind of drop some things in underneath as well, like this. And then we'll put these all into a, we'll do a little alleyway right there. And then we can do like some platforms or some roof elements that kind of go across. Let's move this one that way. Yeah, it kind of comes out into the street a little bit like this. And then this is how those inner kind of areas kind of get created, right? Like you have buildings that kind of encapsulate that. So this will be like some sort of back alley area. We might even want to put some smaller construction down in through there too, right? Then we'll grab something like this. This will be a great one for like the corner piece. I think we'll actually flip it this way though. And we'll put it underneath. I want it to kind of do something like that. Yeah. And we can drop some of the stuff around here too, like this. Kind of fill in some of these elements and make it look like there's some stuff that kind of pokes out from underneath, which is super fun. And we can do the same thing with some of these stone elements as well, especially if we're going to be doing like some sort of stone base, right? Now this is still looking a little bit flat. These are just like stamped images that are kind of over on top of each other. We're going to be fixing that here in a moment as well. And then starting to add in all of the additional kind of little elements here. So here we have some additional roof kind of elements, right? And we can start to drop these in to further kind of augment some of this stuff. So maybe we'll do a little bit that kind of comes out here. And again, going above and below, and we can actually change some of these dynamics. So let's make this, let's make it more narrow like that. And maybe drop some stuff in here. So we get that kind of layered feeling where this is built up over time here. I'm going to move this one over just a little bit so it doesn't interfere with that. And by using these all over the place like this, we're going to get that. You're not going to feel as though that things are repeating over and over again, right? Like it feels really natural. You're getting lots of neat kind of interactions here. We have a whole bunch of different little things that we can kind of just grab and drop around. And like I was saying before, we have some different kind of awnings here. And here is where I would come into my tint and we can change the colors of these. Let's make this one a bit, let's make it a bit darker here. And we can actually, we don't even need to do it in here. We can hold down R, G, and B, and we can use our mouse wheel to do all of those color changes as well. So let's say I want to make it a little bit more, something like this, and drop that down, and we can stamp this right underneath here. So that kind of pokes out from there. We can do maybe one over here. And one of the things that I really like about this system, and I can jump back over into here, is that let's say we want to, we start building this and we're like, wow, I really would want to go over in this direction. We can just jump down in here and we can, all we have to do is switch over to our edit, and we have these little edit buttons and we can just grab these. I'm going to hold down Control so they snap. Oh, I guess I missed that one. And I can snap this right to the grid and pull that out even further. And this is just because it's a seamless texture, it's going to fill all of those different areas right over there. And again, I can come back in here and I can do any of the adjustments that I want to after the fact. If I want to change the color of my layers or do any of those things, it's always available to me. So the next thing we're going to do is let's create our base effects layer here for our shadows. And so in our effects tab, I'm going to go down to adjust colors here, and I'm just going to lower down the brightness. And then I'm going to enable my mask. And what that does is it's only going to show exactly where I tell it to. So here I'm in the rectangle, and what I can do is I can just start to draw out some basic kind of shadow shapes from my buildings here. Thinking about their roof construction, and I don't have to be very precise here. I'm going to actually be blurring this out. So over in here would get a lot of shadows, and here we'll probably bring that right up to there, maybe like there and here. And again, one of the things that you should always realize is that in real life, shadows oftentimes don't react exactly the way you think. There's so much reflective light. There's so much. And I can hold down Shift to take away. And I can also hold down Control to, Alt to draw out any shape that I want to. So I can do some of these things. Remove some there. And this is why before I was saying, like, we don't have to really worry too much about some of our shadows. And see these kind of things? And then we can just blur out those shadows. We can make further adjustments to our controls up here as well. Maybe we don't want to blur it that much. Maybe we want to blur it something like this. And you can see that this is already starting to add some additional kind of dimensions to this. And some of these shadows are a little bit too strong here. So we're going to be changing that here in a moment. And we can do the same exact thing with highlights as well. Let's put a little bit of a shadow on that side. And then we should probably bring this back a little bit. And we could even do some little shadows here. I don't know, Drake. You tell me. We can do something over here as well. Right there and here. And then I'll just take away from that. And again, I can hold down Alt and I can just kind of fill in some of these if I want to. Maybe do a little bit off of that awning. Yeah. And I'm probably going to bring this up. Let's bring this up to something like 45. Yeah. Make it a lot more subtle. Where we get these kind of elements. And what we can always do is we can add in additional different layers, and we can do some shadows in a lot of different ways as well. But here is like a really cool kind of like base area here. Now what we can do is we have all of our basic stuff done. Like this is a totally playable map as is, but we want to make it look as good as possible, right? So on my dirt layer, we're going to start to add in some grass patches, as well as doing some other like plants and whatnot, anything that's going to be below our building area here, right? And we're going to call this one, let's see, buildings. Whoop, I guess I hit my caps lock at one point. Buildings top. and bottom. Oh, that's awesome, Jake. Oh, yeah, I bet. I do the same thing. It's super fun, though. Creating the environments, I find it to be super fun. Okay, so let's go in. We can now add in some additional kind of elements as well, like I said. So let's go up out of here. Don't, I don't think I want to use any of the this kind of stuff in here, but we can always come back to it. So let's go up, and I'm going to actually go into, well, let's go into the 2019 art package. This is always a great one, and we go into our decorations. We have lots of, this is a very useful art package for pretty much creating all kinds of different stuff. Oh, hey, everybody. So let's grab some of these grass patches, and we'll go back into our painting system here, make sure we're on our dirt layer. And I'm going to select my stamp, and I'm going to just grab this. And so you can see this is just like a little textured patch of grass here. Now remember, we have changed the colors on here. So this is going to change the colors of this when I drop it down. But that's exactly what I want. I want it to kind of stay in that same element here. This will be all of the different little grass that kind of grows up. Now what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to lower down my opacity, change the size, and I can stamp out these, and we can create some really cool kind of painterly effects here. And you can see as this begins to build up, it's almost like it's a really cool effect. I really enjoy the way that these systems kind of go into each other. And because we're working underneath, right, we're underneath all of this other stuff, we can work with a lot of freedom. Those shadows instantly kind of add to what we're trying to do here. And make this a bit bigger and kind of stamp this in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my opacity all the way to the end here, and we'll do some of these harder kind of spots. Some coming out from underneath some of these porches and whatnot. And we can drop some stuff over here. And again, lower down that opacity. I'm holding down A and using my mouse wheel and just stamping this stuff out here. And I can always go back over into these tabs, and you see this is all the things that I've stamped, and I can grab these and move these around at any time here. So like over here, if I want to make this seem like a little bit more of a path, I can just bring some of this stuff over. Maybe we'll bring this one over onto that side. And so you can constantly kind of tweak these. And let's go back over into here. And I'll stamp a little bit more over on this side. Nice. Now let's grab some, we can do like some bushes and some other stuff as well. Any of those incidental plants, and whether you're aware of it or not, oftentimes plants will grow right next to a building, right? I'm not exactly sure why, but that does seem to tend to happen. So we can kind of emulate that. I think that we won't use any of the plants from in here. I think I'm going to use some of the bushes from maybe the, and this is one of the great things too, is like you can mix and match all of these art packs together to create some really interesting kind of environments, right? So let's go into, I think I'm going to use Let's use some of the ones. I think that there's some good ones in, well, I could just type in bush. Yeah, let's grab this one from the desert. And I'm going to make this smaller so that it's going to fit in with the rest of these elements here. And now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a new painting layer, and I'm going to drop this down in underneath. And this is going to be my plants. Now I might add some additional kind of stuff in here. We could do like crates and barrels and all of that kind of stuff as well. So this could be more like all of the incidentals that would be below the building line, but above that ground line. Yeah, shrubbery, that's right. But the reason why I want to keep this separate here, and you can see I want the colors to be a little bit more true, and I want to have a little bit more control over that. And we might even put some on this layer as well, so we can get some of this interaction, right? It looks like it's kind of underneath, and then you can kind of get some bits that kind of like grow up over some of these areas. So it would feel as though that some of this stuff was taller than you think it might be. And we can even do some out here as well. Now, one of the great things about the way that the system is we can always pick this up again and use it. So once we have it down on the actual image space, and you can see how much that just adding a little bit of extra stuff here really adds to the environment. We'll do some and some of this stuff might even grow out. And what I do is I hold down Shift and rotate the image so it doesn't seem as repeating. I will also use Control and the mouse wheel to change its size a lot. And I've gotten into the habit, I do this a lot. So if I ever do something and you're not exactly sure how I've done it, just let me know in the chat and I'll explain it to you, because I do it kind of like muscle memory at this point. Oh yeah, some goats. And we're going to create this into like a kind of a square over here. We'll do some like stonework or something interesting. But we'll kind of dig into some of this. And you can see how this is what I'm talking about being lived in. All of these little additional elements. This is what makes the environment believable. It's though, right, like there are stuff that happens for no other reason than it just did. Oh yeah, we can definitely do a town well. And let's grab, now that we've done a good pass over of this particular bush, we can always add in some additional ones as well. I'm just going to actually type in plant, and this should bring up a whole bunch of different ones as well. So let's add in some additional kind of decorative plants here. Let's find something that's going to be a little bit fitting. We don't want, I think these ones are underwater plants. We could do ferns aren't really something that you would see, but oh, this is a good one. This little guy. We can break up some of this stuff here. And even though you might not notice it, right, like consciously, you're your eye will pick up on this kind of stuff. And this is why this is starting to feel more comfortable, is because the naturalness of it is beginning to become evident. Eucalyptus? Let's see, this is from the jungle. So we have plant box as well. We could put some of these kind of things around. Maybe we can grab some of these. It's a nice little one too. Test art pack, yeah. Add in some additional kind of color here. And I'll use this one a little bit more sparingly, poking out from underneath some of this stuff. Yeah, we have flowers. Here's some flowers right here. There's flowers. Lots of different types of flowers. We have lots of different types of like vines and ground plants and plant pots. I think that's pretty good for right now, though. We'll call it there. Hey, Jason. So now let's go into we can do like crates. All of the staples for. Oh, I guess I don't want crates. We want crate and barrels and whatnot. We have a crater. I think I'm going to use the ones from let's use the ones from Coastal Map Pack. This one. Oh yeah, yeah. I have lily pads and stuff, and in the swamp art pack, I believe, and maybe in some of the other ones. Yeah, I really like doing water as well. Anything that has water with it, I think is super fun. There's a certain element of mystery, right, that kind of comes out with water, and this motion to it, and yes, I have done. And we should do like some lamp poles. And you know what else would be cool is if we did. I always like it when there's like lines that kind of go across, like clotheslines, or we could do. I think that in one of the art packs, I think that there's a line with like drying plants on it, like in a apothecary scenario. So I'll put some of these things kind of randomly around here. All right, we got a question from Matthew. Let's see. I'm running an Emerald Spire where the first level has a limitation of 5 feet to all light. That's an interesting question. So what you're saying is that the lighting, the furthest that a player can see is 5 feet? And does everybody have their own lighting? So you could do it in a very actual way by just giving everybody a 5-foot light and having the entire area being in darkness. Do you want your players to not be able to see beyond 5 feet, or you just, because you could do it that way as well. You could just limit all vision to 5 feet. And depending on the system, right? Is it 5e? Because you can just put an effect on them in the combat tracker. Oh yeah, birds and stuff. Yeah. It'll save automatically. But yes, you can name it anything you want to. We could call this Fantasy Urban, and then this will be automatically saved. Oh yeah, well let me. There's a couple of different ways that we can kind of approach that. Here, let me grab my combat tracker over here, and we can kind of do like a quick little demonstration on the map right now. Yeah, so if you go into these tabs, you can actually set it up so that you can see it exactly like the players can. Enable all line of sight and your lighting system. You do not need to have line of sight on to use the lighting system. So if I turn this on, you can see I can't see anything because this is what the players would see. So if we grab my little buddy Bob and we drop him on here, and we go into player mode, you can see if I click on him, I get to see what he sees. So all I have to do is go into the lighting tab, and with him selected, I can actually add to him, right? So we have token vision and we have token lights, which are two separate things. I can actually add to him a vision that is limited in range. It doesn't have to be one of these presets either. It can be a custom one, where that's just as far as he can see, 5 feet, and that regardless of if he has a light with him or not. Or I can just give him an actual token light, and we can say that for all intents and purposes, right? So that's going to be 5 feet out, I'm assuming, so like 15 feet across. So you could do something along the lines of like, and then we could change this. And you can adjust that. Yes, you can do it from the effects button as well. It's always going to be a multitude of different ways that you can approach all of these scenarios. So you could just set it up in this way. If you're concerned with different light sources being affecting it and whatnot, you can just do it and set the token vision. And you can actually create, right, like presets. If you go into your options, you can do token lights, and you can create presets here. So if you create a new preset, so you can see here that this will say the bright, the dim one, and you can just put them on them without having to mess with this. So lots of different ways that you can kind of approach that. While you're making your map, one of the best things that I can kind of give you for advice is that always have a little test character that you can apply things to. So yeah, this is the custom way. You can also just write the effect out in the combat tracker, right? So you can just, in the effects area, you can type it in if you know, depending on the system that you're playing in. But There are lots of different ways to approach the scenario. You can also do it with limiting the token vision so that if they don't have a light source, it doesn't really matter, or if they do. Yeah, play around with it because there's a lot that it's all kind of intertwined together. Yeah, right. Oh, that's funny. So yeah, always use like a test character, and then you can set up all of those different parameters, and you'll make your life a lot easier because you can see it now from the character's perspective as they kind of move around here, right? And here's the GM view, so we can turn lights off, and then that's going to be removed here. Yeah, so you can totally do it, and it would be a super cool, immersive kind of experience, I think, for your players. Next thing I'm going to do is let's go to like barrel, and there's a lot of different types of crates and containers and whatnot. And there's probably even more barrels. I think I'm going to grab this one from the medieval buildings. 2. Whoops, we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're on our plants layer down here. And I'm going to do some that are like this. Let's do some smaller ones. And then we'll do some that are like laying over as well. Where do you guys think that the crates and barrels comes from as being a staple for maps in so many different ways? Yeah, we have a nice little grouping like this. Let's grab this. I think you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this like on one of these little like porch areas. Gary Gygax invented it. Oh, that's probably true. So I think in the first interiors map pack, thought that there was one in there, but it might be in the next one. I definitely know that there is a rope brush. Well, let's just type in rope actually, because we might want to do some coils or whatnot. And I'll put this on the dirt layer. We can kind of put this, make these like coils of rope that might be. And here, what we can actually do, we have this rope brush, and so we can go into our, we'll switch from our fill. We'll turn our fill off, and we'll go into our stroke, and we'll drop this right on here. See, we have this nice little rope here. And so on this top layer here, what I can actually do is, and we can do some on the bottom and even underneath as well. You can do like these kind of like lines like this. That one's a little bit, I think that's actually too large of a rope. Let's go back and make this a bit smaller. So again, I'm just holding down Control and using my mouse wheel. And then I can just kind of draw in some shapes like this. But I think I want it to be a little bit smaller even than that. Yeah, like this. Yeah, I like that. We can do some back here as well. Oh, is that true? Interesting. We still have some old cobblestone streets around here. And yes, I live on the coast, so that makes sense. Oh, is there top-down decals of people to make it look like a busy town? No, I don't have. I haven't done any art that is depicting of people or animals in any way like that. There are, however, lots of different. So one of the things that we should probably talk about here is that the way that the images are handled inside of Fantasy Grounds is irrelevant of the source, right? So we can go over into our tokens, for example, and we can go into, I think that like these, not these ones. It's the other ones, right? Like these. I think these are all from Devon Knight. And so if you have something along these lines, you can grab these and use them as a stamp. So if you wanted to find some top-down images like this or create some of your own, I have not done anything like this. But you can grab these kinds of things and you can just stamp them around as well. I'll put this on an additional. So any of these, any images that you happen to have inside of Fantasy Grounds are all able to be used. So tokens, portraits, images are all able to be used in the image creation system here. So you could certainly do it without much of a problem. Yeah, you're very welcome. And as I said, next week we're actually going to be doing a little stint on how to import your own images, how to create images for the brush tools, and so on. So that should give you guys a little bit more insight into the way that the system works. One of the other things that I'm going to do now is I'm going to, let's create another effects layer, and I'm going to drop this down in here. I'm going to do some color variations in the stone. So oh yeah, we'll be diving into that next time. So I'll be going through what I consider to be the best practices in the creation process, and what kind of works and why, as far as like the brushes go and so on. All of the different types of parameters that we have, and how I kind of set up the image, and so that it will be I'll have a better understanding of how it will be reproduced in Fantasy Grounds. So in this effects layer, again, I'm going to be using an adjust colors. So we'll click on that. And I'm actually going to be lightening this up like this. And I think I'm going to add in a little bit, we'll do red and green together, which is going to make it a little bit yellow. I'll drop down the blue a little. We'll make it a little bit. And I want this to kind of feel as though it's like sun baked. Let's bring this down maybe to something like that. And again, what we'll do is we'll create a mask. And here, what I can do, like I see, we can change the colors of this particular area over here, and I can blur this out, right? So this is going to be blurred. What I can actually do is I can add in some additional kind of elements to this, right? But I can also take away, so we can create these kind of patches. Now I want this to be not quite as, this is a little bit too intrusive here, so I can come back in and I can adjust these parameters here. So maybe we're going to bring this back down to like 53, and this one down to like 51. Yeah, something more along these lines. Just some, oh yeah, some potholes for sure. So just some stuff that's going to, some color variations in here that's going to break this up and make this a little bit more interesting for whatever reason. And we can accentuate this in particular areas here. And all I'm doing is I'm just holding down my Alt button and drawing out some little shapes here. And you can see that this adds quite a lot of, we might want to do some larger kind of stuff here. Quite a lot of a variation here. And we could do this any number of different times. We could do a lot of color variations. The other thing that I like to do, and I'm going to do this, let's do this on an additional painting, or we can actually do it, no, let's delete that. We can do it right on the stone tile itself, is I'm going to go into the winter art package. Let's go into winter map pack, and I'm going to go into the effects, and we have these nice little snow kind of splatters here, and horse poop. Yeah, can't forget that. And yep. Oh, that's a good idea, Drake, for your naval battle. Yeah, it could be very well much easier. And so I'm going to grab something along these lines. And one of the great things about using something that's white is that it enables me to change its color to whatever I wish, right? Because the color system is additive in Fantasy Grounds. And so let's go right over into here, and we can kind of change this any way that we want to. So again, I'm going to hold down R, G, and B, and I'm going to bring this all the way down to black. And then I'm going to add in some additional kind of colors here. So a little bit red and a little bit, let's add in something like this. And then I'm going to lower down my opacity, right? And this is right on the stone tile itself. And here we're getting the interaction with our adjust colors, with the stone colors underneath, and we're creating lots of cool variations here. You can see. And maybe I want to make this, let's lower down that red a little bit, make it a little bit more green. Maybe we have some like moss growing, or it could just be stains from whatever gets transported up and down these streets. Very cool. And we might even want to take something along these lines, right? And we can do this on some of our buildings as well. So we can add in some additional kind of, I'm actually going to make this a little bit darker and a little bit more opaque. I mean, more transparent, less opaque. And you can see we can add some cool, like maybe this is mold or moss that's growing on the tops of some of these buildings. And this just helps break up some of that stuff a little bit. Well, let's do some on like this this awning. They're a little bit too pristine. Break that up with some texture. Awesome. What other elements do you guys think that we should add into streets? We could also, and we have so many different elements along here, right? I have a crack brush for doing like cracks in stonework. And we might want to lower down the opacity of that a little bit, but we can, again, I think we'll make it a little bit darker to match the stone here. Something like this. And you can draw in like cracks that are going across these. And you can see how well this kind of just works in some of these. So fun. Obviously, this is probably something that's a little bit, I have a tendency to go a little bit overboard when I start adding in all these little elements to it, but it's always going to be available to you. It's not something you necessarily have to do. Oh yeah, we can do carts and wagons. That's a good idea. So let's, I always have a hard time with typing. This is ones from our medieval machines. And then we have some from this one as well. We have some wagons here. And this is from Medieval Buildings 2 art pack. I think that should be under the bush. I think I'll use this one. Oh yeah, we could do like some litter. I think that's a good idea. Where there's people, right? There's going to be debris. Oh yeah, we definitely going to have to do some smoke and whatnot. And so let's do a little bit of grab some paper here. We have some and I think what I'll do is I'm going to make this a little bit yellowed. Something like that. And we'll do this on the dirt layer as well, which so it'll change its color even more. Oh, thanks, Bruno. Blocking out ambient light is not blocking viewing. How do you mean? So you mean if I turn on the ambient light and I mask it out, it doesn't stop people from seeing inside of it? It should. We can test that out here. Let's go into our ambient light setting. We'll just put it to sunlight. Go back, let's turn on our lighting system here. So here we have ambient light everywhere. We're seeing it as a player would. And we can go over into our lighting system here, and in our ambient lighting, we can add in a mask. And so we could block out this section here. You can see it no longer can see here. Now let's grab our character. We'll go back into our tab here. Move this out of the way. And we'll drop him into our scene here. Let me just move this over. So if I click on the character, as you can see, when he moves in here, he can't see anything inside of this area. So if I add to him, though, a light, so if we go into our token lights here, with him selected, I could give him, let's say, give him a candle. And you're not going to see it out here, but when we go inside, it should work here. Let's see. Did I not? I didn't add it to him, did I? Got to actually hit the add button. Give him a candle. Add. There we go. And now it works. Oh, yes, it is, Drake. It is. It is indeed. So this is, I've been reworking the whole, I'm going to be going through and doing, I have been going through and doing all of the different themes that I've released so far. This is a sneak peek at the new wizard here. Let me minimize this. So this will be the new desktop. I've been reworking all of the different image elements to the theme itself, going through everything, reworking everything. I haven't done the sidebar yet, but this should be really exciting. We go into our like story elements, for example, reworking all of this stuff. Should be a really cool, interesting new theme. I'm excited. It's the old theme, just redone. Yeah, so the ambient lighting, what it is, oh yeah, you're very welcome, Bruno. So basically, the way that the ambient lighting works, it's a lighting that will affect the entire area here. Let's open this back up. We can talk about it here. So in our ambient lighting, you have total control, and there's a direction to this as well because it will cast shadows based off of your line of sight. And here, let's do a couple of demonstrations. We'll create a new wall layer so that you guys can have a good understanding of this system. And this is always good to go over. We can go over this stuff as many times as we need to. But here, I'm just going to create a wall. And we'll create, let's show the different elements here. Let's do a shadow caster. Yes, well, it can. It can, if you add a mask to it. Otherwise, it's going to illuminate your entire scene. So the reset fog of war option is you just go into its vision. Yeah, view. No, that's not what it is. I think you have to actually click on a thing, and then you can go to reset fog of war. I think you have to click on a token though. Oh, it's layers, isn't it? I don't remember. It's somewhere in there. Yeah, it's on the tokens. Okay. All right, so now let's do terrain. This has got to be enclosed, though, I believe. No, I guess it doesn't anymore. And we can do, I think that's all we really need to. Oh, we could do a pit as well. Yeah, so we have all of the different ones. Windows and illusory walls. We don't really need to do that. Okay. So here we have 4 different types of... Yeah, it's on a token. I assumed. I don't get enough time playing in Fantasy Grounds anymore. So here we have our lighting system, right? Now let's go into the lights. Let's turn on our lights. So we'll enable all of these things, all of these features, and we'll turn on our player vision, and so that we can kind of see it the way that the player would see it too. And we'll go into our ambient light, and now we're going to turn on, let's do sunlight. Now you can see that there is a shadow being cast from these. Now the length of the shadow is determined here. So you can set up line of sight. You can see we still have that mask. So let's remove the mask. So here we have the shadows that are being cast, and now we can change the direction of wherever our light is coming from, as you can see here. We can change the color of our ambient light. We can put it anywhere we want, right? You might want to do it a little bit yellow for... Now we also can change the color of our shadows. So if we want to do like very blue shadows and very orange light, we can. And the direction and length is all going to be controlled by this. So the way that it works is a wall will produce a very heavy shadow, whereas the others will produce varying lengths of gradient. Now, the shadows that are cast by independent lights, right, are a little bit different, but this is our ambient light system. And this is how it kind of works. And you can see that this adds another layer of ability to interact with your world here. So if we set up line of sight for all of these buildings and we turned on our ambient light, it would cast shadows based off of all of these parameters. And these are still affected by light source from your character as well. So walking into these areas will get illuminated. So yeah, just some cool stuff. I'm going to delete this layer, and we'll go into, this won't update until we turn it on and off, I believe. Yeah, we have to like turn things on and off to get that to update. Or close it and reopen it or something. I don't remember. But let's go into ambient light, and we can just turn this right off. Yeah, you know, that's true, Drake, and that's why I always take that into consideration when I'm setting up my line of sight. Oftentimes, I will use other elements instead of the classic wall. So, for example, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this, there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with your line of sight, and I use a lot of different features setting up maps that way. So we could do this with a wall, right? Which is just a very hard edge to it. But I like to use terrain because terrain allows you to see through it, not through it, but the object itself. And so the thing about terrain is it doesn't block movement. However, we can use window to block movement, right? So we can turn off toggleable and turn this off. And you can use this, or you can also use illusory wall, not illusory walls. Yeah, illusory walls are for, you can walk through it, but you can't